In the quiet of Willow Lake, where neighbors kept their distance and secrets hid behind manicured lawns, Karen saw herself as the queen of the community, a self-made monarch with a megaphone and a clipboard. She wasn't content just to rule, she wanted absolute control, especially over her latest obsession, her shiny electric pontoon, which she believed was the future of boating. One morning, as the sun barely peeked over the trees, I was sipping my coffee on the porch when I spotted it, a long bright orange extension cord slithering across my lawn from her garage to the neighbor's dock, like a serpent on a mission. At the end, her boat gleamed under the early light, more like a floating billboard than a vessel. It was her third visit that week, each time charging her boat with a reckless disregard for rules, safety, or even common sense. By 6:30, my power outlet was fried. The smell of burnt wiring filled the air, and I knew this wasn't just bad luck. It was a message. I called the city inspector expecting a laugh, and sure enough, he chuckled when I explained the situation. "That's trespassing and power theft," he said, "but maybe don't stop her just yet." That's when the gears turned in my mind. I was a retired systems engineer, used to designing safety mechanisms for hospitals and skyscrapers. I knew electricity, and I knew how to set a trap without breaking any laws. I didn't unplug her. Instead, I replaced the outlet with a tamper-resistant surge protector I had installed years ago for squirrels and surges. It was legal, safe, and perfect for what I had in mind. When she plugged in that morning, the surge protector would do its job, trip, cause a harmless power shutdown, and ruin her charging session without any flames or explosions. It was elegant, simple, and, best of all, effective. Sure enough, she returned the next day, sneaking down to her boat with a guilty look, plugging in her cord like a thief in the night. Minutes later, her boat's charge light blinked off. Then, I watched with satisfaction as her extension cord smoked, her face twisted in frustration. I had footage, timestamps, everything. When she stormed over, furious and powerless, I stayed silent behind the door, watching her rage boil over. But Karen didn't give up, not even when her battery was dead and her boat sat dead in the water. She doubled down wearing a neon vest with HOA slapped across the back, shouting about green initiatives and compliance. I couldn't help but notice her solar charger explode during her big presentation, proof that her plans were as shaky as her wiring. That night I set a little more bait, a dummy charger, a visible cord, and a motion-activated system. Just enough to tempt her. Sure enough, she crept out, late, plugged in, and waited, only to watch her boat's power drain and die again. I had her on camera, and by morning neighbors started sharing the video, laughing at her latest failure. While she was busy losing her footing, I was uncovering something bigger, a forgotten strip of land that ran between my property and the HOA marina. It was a tiny, overlooked sliver of legal no man's land, and I bought it quietly, knowing it could be my ace in the hole. Now, with new access over that land, I had a secret route, a way to control what she couldn't see coming. Karen's desperation grew. She tried to rally the HOA, posting flyers, demanding electric conversions, even attempting to cut my water supply. But I'd anticipated her every move. My electrician nephew helped me reinforce my electricity system, and I kept detailed records, footage, receipts, blueprints. Meanwhile, Karen's authority crumbled as her own lies and schemes were exposed. The HOA turned against her, and she was finally ousted, her plans collapsing like a poorly wired circuit. But she wasn't done yet. That night, I caught her sneaking onto my dock with a crowbar trying to reconnect her charger. As she plugged in again, my system kicked in, causing a loud pop and a flash of light. She yelped, flailing into the lake. The neighborhood watched her stumble out, soaked, defeated, and silent. Her reign was over, her control broken. In the aftermath, I uncovered her secret wiring, hidden behind the marina office, a tangled mess of illegal splices meant to siphon power from the entire HOA grid. She'd been planning to wire the whole marina to her own back pocket, a quiet takeover. I and my nephew cut every line, sealed every connection, and sealed her fate. Finally, the HOA rewrote its rules, delineating clear boundaries, and I made sure my land was protected. Karen moved on out of town, leaving behind a lake that finally felt peaceful again. But I knew better than to relax. Power, control, secrets, they always find a way to come back if you're not vigilant. And so, I kept my system tight, my wires guarded, and my peace intact. Because in Willow Lake, the quiet always comes with a price, and I was ready to pay it. Karen's soaked figure staggered onto the dock, clutching her ruined charger like a lifeline. Her face twisted with rage and disbelief as she looked at the dead battery, the flickering lights, and the helpless silence of her once prized boat. She screamed something unintelligible at the water, fists pounding the deck in frustration. Then, she saw me through the window, watching her with a calm, almost amused expression. She froze for a moment, her eyes narrowing into dangerous slits, then turned and stalked off into the darkness, dripping and defeated. I stayed inside, watching her retreat with a quiet sense of victory. That was just the beginning. I had already prepared everything, the footage, the logs, the little tricks I'd set, ready to unleash when the time was right. She had no idea how much I knew, how many lines I'd already cut, how many wires I'd sealed. Her power trip was over, and she hadn't even realized she'd handed me the keys. By morning, the neighborhood buzzed with rumors. The video of her slipping into the lake circulated through the community group chat. Some neighbors laughed, some shook their heads. A few even sent me private messages asking what I'd done to her. I just replied with a simple smiley face. I didn't need to say anything. The truth was in the footage, the logs, the silent wires that now ran clean and safe. Karen's schemes had been exposed and her reign had ended, or so I thought. But I underestimated her desperation. That afternoon I found her back on my dock, this time with a crowbar in hand. Her hair was wild, her eyes bloodshot, and her face twisted with a new kind of fury. She moved like a predator, sneaking over the edge of the dock, eyes darting around, searching for something. I watched through the window, heart pounding. She had a plan, and it wasn't just to reconnect her charger. No, she was trying to cut the wires, to undo what I had done to regain her control. I pressed the button on my phone. The hidden alarm I'd set up went off instantly, loud, shrill, and impossible to ignore. The noise echoed across the shoreline as Karen froze, caught in the act, her crowbar trembling in her hand. Her face contorted in shock and fury as she realized I was watching. Without a word, she spun around and dashed back into the shadows. I waited a beat, then quietly moved outside. The yard was silent now, the only sound the distant hum of the neighborhood. I moved toward the dock, careful not to make a sound. When I reached the edge, I saw her trying to pry open the cover of the power box I had installed, probably hoping to find a way past my security measures. But I'd already anticipated this. The box had a lock, a secondary alarm, and a simple but effective system, a small sensor that would trigger if anyone tampered with the wiring. Only I knew the combination, and I kept the access code hidden. I pressed the button on my remote and the system activated. The moment she touched the box, a gentle but firm zap shot through her fingers, just enough to make her jerk back, yelp, and drop the crowbar with a clang. She stumbled away, soaking wet and cursing under her breath, her hands trembling. Her plan had failed again. I watched her retreat into the shadows, her shoulders hunched in defeat. I knew she'd come back. She always did, desperate, angry, and determined to take back what she thought was hers. But I was ready. I turned and headed back inside, feeling the weight of her failure settle in my chest. I had pushed her one step further away, but the game wasn't over yet. She'd be back, and next time, I'd be waiting. The wires, the cameras, the alarms, they weren't just for protection anymore. They were my weapons, and I was about to make sure she never crossed that line again. The rain hammered down as I watched her stumble backward, clutching her hand where the shock had jolted her. Her eyes darted around wildly, searching for an escape, but the yard was silent except for the pounding thunder. She looked defeated, her face streaked with dirt and rain, but I knew better. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Suddenly, she reached into her coat and pulled out something shiny. For a moment I thought it was a knife, but then I saw the glint was just the reflection of a small silver key. Her trembling fingers fumbled with it, and I realized she was trying to unlock the power box again. That's when I knew. I had overlooked one thing. She wasn't just angry. She was desperate enough to risk everything. I pressed the button on my phone. A deafening alarm blared, cutting through the storm. Her eyes widened in panic as she looked around, realizing she'd been caught. But instead of running away, she lunged forward, her hand reaching for the box. That's when I saw the flash of metal in her other hand, a tiny, sharp blade. My heart stopped. She wasn't just trying to disable the system, she was ready to do something far worse. I froze, unsure whether to act or hide. Then out of nowhere, she sliced at the wires, her blade slicing through the cables I had carefully laid out. Sparks flew, and the system flickered. In that instant, I knew I had to make a choice: lose everything or fight back. I dove forward, knocking her arm aside just as she tried to cut the main wire. The blade slid across my hand, but I didn't care. I grabbed her wrist, twisting it hard enough to make her scream. The key she clutched slipped from her grasp and clattered onto the wet ground. She struggled, eyes filled with fury and fear, but I held on tight. Then she did something I didn't expect. She suddenly stopped fighting, her body trembling, tears mixing with the rain. "Please," she whispered hoarsely. "It's not just about the wires. It's about what's coming, something you don't understand." Her words hit me like a punch. I loosened my grip, confused. "What are you talking about?" She looked away, voice trembling. "The real threat isn't me. It's what I was trying to stop. The system I built. It's not just for protecting the boat. It's for stopping something worse, something coming from the water." I stared at her, trying to process. My mind raced. What could she mean? Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small, strange device, humming softly. "I was supposed to destroy this, but I couldn't. It's dangerous. More dangerous than anything you've seen, and now they're coming." Before I could ask more, the sky rumbled again, and a dark shadow moved beneath the water's surface, massive, silent, and relentless. It was approaching the dock, and I realized with a shock that she had been right all along. The system I'd thought was just about security was actually a barrier to hold back something that no one could explain. In that moment, I understood everything. The warnings, the strange noises, the warnings I had ignored. It wasn't just a story. It was real, and now with the water rising and the creature surfacing, I could see the terrible truth. The end of everything we knew was just beginning. The storm raged around us as I looked into her eyes and saw the same fear I felt. But I also saw something else: hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, we could still fight this. Because if there was one thing I knew for sure, it was this: the real battle was about to begin, and it would change everything forever.